يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. Great to be with you, and do remember we are with you till 10 o'clock this morning, and we'd love you to become a part of the conversation. On the show this morning, we're going to be talking to Wayne Duvenage from Outer about a whole host of issues that's playing out right here on our doorstep. Then we'll be talking to Dani van den Berg. He's going to talk to us about cricket and the Pink campaign. And we'll be wrapping up by talking with Dr. Anwar Jiwa. He runs a rehab center in Durban, and he's going to be talking about one of his treatment modalities, particularly ibogaine. But of course, we're not going to only be focusing on ibogaine. We're going to be talking about other treatment options and of course just how well these treatments are going down in the community. But all of that later on. Right now we have Wayne standing by to talk to us about the developments in Outer. Wayne, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Lovely to finally meet you in the flesh. We've been talking for a long, long time on other platforms,
Yes.
and we now finally have you here at ITV. We're absolutely amazed at the type of work you're doing, and I know Outer started out back in the day when e-tolls were introduced, but you've gone way, way beyond e-tolls.
Yes.
So what exactly is your mandate now?
Well, our mandate is to challenge the abuse of authority, and it's around maladministration and corruption, the waste of taxpayers' money. So it's mainly against government entities, specifically in the state-owned entities, where we see the modus operandi of these organizations, the SANRALs, the ESCOMs, the Transnets, SAAs of the world, SABC. They inflate the value of their assets by replacement value, according to international financial reporting systems, which is fine if you follow them diligently and properly. And then what they do, they borrow massively against that on a good looking balance sheet. They started a lot of this in 2009. And then with that borrowing, they spend heavily on overpriced projects. So Medupi is one, Kusile is one, road construction, and the list goes on and on and on. And the connected companies that earn billions out of that are the concerns that we've got. There are many other issues, but that's just at a high level. And if we don't tackle the people that are involved through their delinquent directorship statuses that we want to impose on them, through their conduct and their maladministration, if they do not tackle these matters, we take them on individually in their personal capacities through the law courts and everything, so they can be personally held liable. And that's the journey that we're on. It's a long journey. This is not a sprint, and we've structured Outer to tackle these matters over time. So the e-toll was our first one, but we've taken this model into other areas now.
The issue with e-tolls, SANRAL and the court case, where do we stand with that?
Okay, so e-tolls was launched 3.5 years ago. The courts allowed SANRAL to carry on because they'd already borrowed the money and the gantries were up. Very different in the Western Cape, where SANRAL lost because the city of Cape Town caught it before it happened, and they won that case. Very similar to the reasons why it's been introduced unlawfully here. What the courts allowed us then in the Supreme Court is they said, look, SANRAL can carry on trying to raise the funds to borrow to pay back the bonds, but if anybody is summoned and they defend themselves in court, what we call a collateral challenge, all the administrative law that allowed SANRAL to continue tolling falls away, and a judge has to rule whether somebody is being breaking the law if they don't pay for whatever reason. And there are many reasons why they don't have to pay. So those court cases are coming to the fore right now. We are defending 152 cases of our members, Outer's members. SANRAL are summoning the public, the general public as well. We're watching very closely what happens. The message to the public is there is no precedent So when SANRAL claims that they've got a default judgment against somebody who forgot to or didn't respond to summons, that is not a precedent. Even if they win a case, it's not a precedent. It's like we liken it to the past laws of the past, a very poorly introduced wrong law that the government fought in courts. They won a few, and the minute they lost their first case, the past laws had to die because that becomes the precedent. And that is why we're here. We will continue to fight this until we win. Hopefully our case is the first case and it's defended properly because we've got a lot of history. We know the facts. And we know the issues that have to be fought in court. But if they want to try and tackle the individual, which we call bullying tactics, let them continue down that road because we can't stop them. The law allows them to.
So what would happen if I receive a summons and I haven't signed up? I'm not a member of OUTA. What do I do?
You need to give notice of intention to defend that, or you need to say, okay, I'll pay up and settle my bills. Now, the compliance levels are below 20%. 80% of people are not paying. The scheme is defunct. It has failed completely. They fail like this around the world. The sad thing is government hasn't come to the reality of their senses here on this matter. They're not seeing the sanity that has to prevail eventually. The scheme will never win. It never lasts. But they continue to keep it in place because there's still 60 to 70 million rand a month that they're earning from the corporates. They need to be earning over 300 million a month to pay the bonds. But that 60 to 70 million rand pays handsomely to the companies that are feeding off the scheme, the collection process, the guarding companies, the security companies, the catering companies.
Well, they can argue that they're creating employment.
Let me tell you what we could do with 300 million rand a month, this country. A lot more people could be employed than the 1,000 people that are employed.
Wayne, if I get a summons and I'm not a member of OUTA, can I still come to you to help me?
You go onto the website, outa.co.za. We've got, are you a member? Do this. If you're not a member, do that. Get a lawyer, do all of the things that you need to keep us informed if you want. We can always see if we can assist, absolutely. But what we do say is we survive purely on the funding from...
You're an NGO.
Yeah, we're an NGO. We don't make profits out of it. We pay market-related salaries to a team of lawyers, researchers, investigators, communications people, and we set this up so that we can go and fight many issues. E-tolling is just one of them. And if you do contribute to OUTA and you get a summons, you pass it on to us, and we'll handle that case for you in court with our lawyers, our experienced lawyers, with all on our cost.
How do I become a lawyer, and what other protection would I get from OUTA if I become a member of OUTA?
Look, OUTA is, you go online, outa.co.za. It takes 5 minutes. You click and you put your debit order in, and you choose the amount. There's no prescriptive fee here. It's not a membership as in like a golf club or a tennis club. This is about funding an organization like OUTA. We call it crowdfunding for prosperity. We take those funds and then we use them. We build a litigation war chest so that, because government has the strategy of litigation and this attrition through lawfare strategy where they wear down civil society organizations. Well, we've been able to fight that back. We're now building this massive war chest for litigation that goes on ongoingly so that we can lay charges against delinquent directors like Dudu Mnyeni, Hladi Motsoeneng, Batabile Dlamini, and so forth. So we can hold them accountable for the misspending and waste of our taxpayers' money. So that's what membership, or that's what we call supportership of a effective civil intervention organization like OUTA is about. It's about thousands of people giving a small amount of money every month so that we can pay salaries, we can pay rent, we can pay our communication costs, and we can pay the legal teams. But what we've been able to do is reduce the legal costs because we've got an advocate and 4 full-time lawyers on our team building these cases, and that saves us millions of rands, which in the past we used to pay to expensive law firms. We now build the cases ourselves, and then we engage with the senior counsel teams, the external teams, which you have to, and the cases are built and we reduce our costs. So we've saved millions of rands. We can take on more cases that way.
And undoubtedly, I think you need the entire South Africa behind you on this one, because you really are acting as our watchdog. You are protecting a civil society from being fleeced and obviously being exploited at every turn. That being said, we looked at SANRAL. I just hear, and I think you've heard the news this morning as well, on the advocate, I think he's a lawyer. Professor from Wits University, Professor Malakani apparently is the alleged advisor to the new finance minister. And there's talks and mumblings and rumblings about nationalizing mines and a whole host of other private entities. I've heard talk of even medical aids, private medical aids being, nationalized. Is that possible? Private schools as well. Is that a possibility? And if it does go that route, what does it mean to us as civil society?
Well, the economy collapses completely, and nationalization's never worked anywhere else, anywhere in the world. So what we find strange is that the Minister of Finance, Minister Gigaba, even has an advisor who has mutterings of this nature. I mean, it's absolutely damaging, because you can't in one breath say, we're going to the international community to get them to invest here, but I've got this advisor who's a bit of a clown because he makes these statements of nationalization. So what Minister Gigaba needs to do is make it clear, and he has tried to distance himself from it, but you don't try and distance yourself. You distance yourself by saying, excuse me, but this man has nothing to do with this organization of government in South Africa anymore. He fires him, he gets rid of him, he's not an advisor. If he remains an advisor to Gigaba, and Gigaba is going overseas to try and solicit funding for this country, well, the backlash he will get from these investors will say, well, while you've got buffoons like this advising you, you know, how do we invest in a country where we might come and put our money down and build schools or build whatever, and you might nationalize it? So I think what needs to happen is it does muddy the waters for government. It does make life a bit more difficult for them, and it makes them have to make statements, clear statements. This is our policy, and when advisors like that make utterings of this nature, we have to distance ourselves from that. But don't distance yourself by saying we don't necessarily agree with what he says. Distance yourself by saying you have no right to make a statement on that behalf. You're not an advisor to us anymore. Off you go. Go back to the university and preach that stuff if you want to, and have the debates in the university. But do not say that on our watch. So let's see what the minister does. I mean, it's those statements, by the way, are ludicrous. Nationalising banks and any industry is a disaster for any economy. And look around the world where it's happened and why it's happened. Those economies are tanked, they're trashed, they don't exist anymore. If we want to compete on the world stage, we can't talk like that.
We've had a lot of rumblings, we've had lots of civil society marching, calling for the stepping down of Jacob Zuma.
Yeah.
We believe that he's truly lined his pockets and truly taken care of all his cronies. Yeah. There's been a lot of cronyism going on.
Absolutely.
There's issues around the Guptas, being in partnership, or rather having captured the state, so to speak. And I know that you were also at the forefront of these marches. I caught you on TV in the background there. What do you believe those marches, the type of signals that have sent out to government, do you think that they're going to sit up and take notice, or just wish us away?
Yeah, the response we get a lot of inquiries about that. Do marches help this protesting mail? What does it do really? Well, our simple response is by not marching and by doing nothing doesn't help anyway. By marching, you send a signal, and that depends. If 5 people march, well, it doesn't send a signal. What you saw, the turnouts on the 7th and 12th of April
was amazing.
Amazing. And for the first time, you saw middle-class South Africa who doesn't march. They normally get on, they're compliant, and they don't moan. They're moaning now. Now, when society pressure is put on government, it normally is not. It's normally the middle class pressure where the pressure is biggest on government, because they have the opportunities to change their tax spend, their own spend. It's when business and middle class society says we're going to shut the economy down for 1 day, for 2 days, for a week if need be, in order to bring about the change that is required by them. That's when governments do sit up. Now, President Zuma pretends, and he gives this impression that it's not really an issue for us. It is an issue for them. The world is watching. BBC, those marches around the world were throughout Europe and in America. They were marching in those countries as well. Now, when Minister Gigaba goes over and says, we need you to invest here, they show that footage. They said, tell us what's going on here, because we've never seen marches like this. Peaceful marches, and that is the message.
Thank God for that.
So, yes, they are very, very effective. The question is, what happens next? Do we continue marching? I think there might be something on the 27th, Freedom Day. And what you are finding now in the background civil society movements like ourselves, Save SA, Section 27, are being called in by other entities, political parties, labour movements, church movements, to form a united front now, as what had to happen in the apartheid days, a united effort, and business as well, to make this challenge bigger and more real. So when society and civil society and organizations like ours say, this is what's happening, participate, all we want is for the people to participate as much as they can. It works. It does have an impact.
Okay, time for an ad break. I'm talking to Wayne Duvenage from OUTA, and after the ad break we're going to look at mergers perhaps. Are they going to be more powerful? Is that the way we need to go? But do stay with us. We'll unpack all of that after the ad break. And don't forget, we're still going to be talking to Dani van den Berg about the Pink campaign, and we'll wrap up with Dr. Anwar Jiwa about drug addiction and the rehab centre based in Durban. Wayne Duvenage from OUTA is our first guest on the show this morning, and we are talking about the current happenings, uprisings, marches in South Africa, and the fact that I think people are now sick and tired of the shenanigans of government, and what Save South Africa, OUTA and all the other partners are doing to try and make government change their minds and be honest, open and transparent, and to stop wasting taxpayers' money. And that means your money and my money. Wayne, back to you. You spoke about possible partnerships. Would that happen? And I know that you've been working closely with Save South Africa as well. How closely do they work with you? How different or similar are you in your approach to what's going on in South Africa?
Well, civil society can never be one organization. So you have Section 27 and Corruption Watch and OUTA and AfriForum, and there are many of them out there. And we don't collaborate with all of them, and because each one is focused on its work. But when issues like this happen, and there is a call for nationwide marching, then we get together and we sit down and we discuss exactly what is it that we want to achieve, because the public call us daily. What's the next program? What's happening? The minute somebody from civil society says, okay, there's going to be a march on the 7th of April, for instance, that gets out there. Then people start saying where, when, what time, how. And we've got to give them that information, otherwise it fizzles out. So that's really our role. We do it collectively. This time around, we're seeing politicians are getting hold of civil society. Church groups are getting hold of civil society. Various foundations to form a united front. And that's where we are right now, talking about what are the next steps. You know, there are litigation options, there are marches and protests and so forth. So, and we've just got to keep that wheel going. This is a rolling mass action, as we've seen in the
What
past.
about political aspirations? Do you think that OUTA could become a political party? And I don't think it would be such a bad idea.
No. Look, there's a role for politics and there's a role for civil society. We don't want to go down the political route. And I'll tell you why. Politics is it's a 5-year event. Issues become popular around electioneering time. And then the political processes run in between those elections. Civil society's role is we call it current democracy. It's dealing with current issues now. It's not electioneering. It's not popularizing matters. It's tackling issues head on that need to be tackled in the heat of the moment. And that's why we exist. So I don't think we'll ever become a political party. We have to remain apolitical, because civil society's role is very, very important. And if we went down the political route, a gap, a void would be there again. No, somebody might take it up. But I think we've got a successful formula. And we are sustainable, and we just need more and more people to come on board to support us so we can grow and get more cases on board.
People have been calling for Jacob Zuma to step down, and there is a differing point of view. There are certain people suggesting that should he step down, you might get much worse. The sophistication involved in all of the corruption will be such that we won't be able to wade through it. We won't be able to make sense of all of that. And perhaps it's a situation of better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Do you agree with that point of view?
No.
Why
not at all. No, because better the devil you know that's causing destruction is not the answer. The devil that's causing the destruction needs to go. And we must make sure that he's not replaced with somebody equally or worse off than he is. So whoever comes in needs to know and feel the pressure that Jacob Zuma is under. So if he is replaced, he's replaced with somebody who says, look, I can't continue, because what happens is our political party is being split up now. It's being undermined, and the chances are, if you had an election today, I don't know if the ANC would win it. I don't think they would, if all the trajectories are correct. So they've got some serious soul searching to do, and what you have though is a political capture as well, not just a state capture, but a political capture within the ANC by Jacob Zuma, that people cannot move without him doing what he wants to do. And unless they deal with that and tackle that, well, then the party becomes decimated, and they know that. If the party is split, you have a dual party, as we've seen. COPE is split off from them, the EFF is formed out of them, and you get these coalition governments that are very possible later on. Yes, ANC might get some of that back, who knows, but let's see what happens. So we have to tackle this matter now. The reality is, and you raised a very, very important point, the quagmire of corruption. How do we tackle it? You can tackle it. Between civil society and government, the new government, whoever it is, we can set down the process. Remember, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We can introduce a Truth and Reconciliation style of commission around corruption. We can provide amnesty so long as A, people own up, and B, money is repatriated. And then C, if you don't take advantage of it and you are found out, and we can find out, whistleblowers, all the information's there, those people will go to jail, and we go through that process. Now, when do we start it and how do we start it? Those are the mechanisms we've got to put in place. I believe we can turn this country around, and I believe that we can tackle corruption head on. And it's not a sprint, it's a journey. But eventually, I can tell you now, eventually all these people who are corrupt, including Jacob Zuma, will have to face their day in court. And if they're found guilty, they will have to go and face the consequences. And if they leave the country, they'll be extradited back here. And all the pressures that we have to put on them around the world over time. If it takes 10 years, it takes 10 years. That's why we're in this for the long run.
Do you believe that cronyism and corruption is one and the same thing?
Well, cronyism needn't be linked to corruption, but it is a lot in this case. So cronyism is its form of nepotism. It's looking after your mates and giving jobs and contracts to mates or connected people and families and that. So there is a close correlation between cronyism and corruption. And not necessarily be nepotism and corruption, but nepotism, it's not good for the country as well, because you just cannot hold people to account when they're related to you and they're reporting to you in business or in government.
We've all been waiting, sitting back with bated breath about the nuclear deal. We know that the Minister of Energy, the Jumat lady,
Peterson, yeah.
yes, she has been fired and she subsequently resigned. Where do we stand on that? What's going to happen now? Because we've been told, well, the whisperings is that the nuclear deal is done and dusted. What does that mean for South Africa?
Well, it's not done and dusted. They're going through the request for proposals now. What's done and dusted is that the hijacking of Treasury, whereas in the past Minister Gordhan was saying, show us that A, we need it, B, that we can afford it before we go ahead. Where the new minister is not asking those questions. Julie Peterson was caught in the ham in the sandwich there. I think that's why she's been removed. So let me just give you a very quick summary. The nuclear deal can and will be stopped and has to be stopped. We just cannot afford it.
I've heard differently.
Well, yes, and we've also heard differently, and we've heard that the contracts are behind the scenes done and dusted. That's one issue. The reality is that those contracts can and will be undone if they have to be, through international courts, through international strategies as well as local. Let's just understand one thing, that when the new Medupi and Kusile projects come on stream and all the other stuff, we will have a capacity of 52 gigawatts of energy output. The demand right now is at 27 gigawatts. It's around half of what we can produce. Now, you don't always, you don't wait for you to fill up 100% before you start building. You've got a plan. But where the trajectory is, there's going to be no increase. We peaked at about 32 gigawatts a number of years ago. It's gone down since then. Where our current growth rate is, there's going to be no additional demand on the 27 gigawatts. We don't need to build not even renewable energy, I'm saying, but certainly not nuclear. For the next 10 years, we don't even have to think about it. We've got enough capacity. Unless you want to take off all the coal-fired power stations, then you've got to find something to replace that. Now, coal is cheap. It creates jobs in Mpumalanga mainly. And that would be a sin. We have to clean up those energy processes. So the reality is we don't need it, and B, we cannot afford it.
So are you going to keep your eye on that?
We have got our eye on it.
Okay.
We have court processes ready to roll on the IRP and the IEP process, which haven't been done properly. And there are a number of activities and a number of fights being bought on the nuclear matter, not just by ourselves, but we coordinate with others, yeah.
I should imagine environmentalists are involved as well.
Absolutely.
All right, we are running out of time. Let's just get some comment on a few issues. Brian Moleffi's 30 million rand golden handshake is now going into Parliament. SAA and the SABC, which is in a total mess. What can you tell us about those situations?
So we will be challenging the golden handshake, as are others. And,
I mean, that's taxpayers' money,
yes,
is it not? We need that money back.
It's absolutely wrong. And all these other golden handshakes, the government is out of line when people work for 18 months and resign and get a 30 million rand. I mean, everybody would want those jobs. That is nonsensical conduct.
Will he give it back?
If the court orders him to, he'll have to.
Okay.
And we've just got to put the pressure on, the right pressure. So that's going to be tackled. Claudia Motsoeneng still earning a salary at SABC. The courts have told him he shouldn't even be there. We're working with the interim board at the moment. And we provided a lot of input to the committee, the emergency committee that was set up on SABC. So we're working a lot in that space. As you know, in SAA, we've laid charges against Dudu Mnyeni as a delinquent director if she's found guilty of the stuff that we've presented in court. And we have presented a very strong case. Then she may not sit on any board as a director or as a senior executive or a senior manager, including the Jacob Zuma Foundation, because the SIPEC registration process may not register her in those positions. So the sentence for her will be that she cannot fill these positions anymore. Now, that's one sanction, and we must go down those roads of all sanctions. We'll also start laying criminal charges and so forth. At the moment, the current system protects these people. I mean, we've laid charges against Claudia Motsoeneng. The case gets moved from here to there. But when those barriers are lifted, when new people come into those positions and they're not ordered to protect those people, gloves are off, they go to jail, they go to court, they face the music, and that's what we've got to keep doing. So, yeah, there's a lot of work in all of those state-owned entities.
The SABC is said to be bankrupt.
Yes, it is.
What happens now? There is a new board, an interim board that sits there. Is there any way of perhaps saving the SABC? And I don't know if they do need to be saved, but what's the situation with the SABC?
Look, every country needs a state broadcaster. It doesn't need to have the political meddling that this one has had. Maybe it doesn't need to be saved. Who knows? Whatever happens, if government wants to keep it in place, like SAA doesn't need to be there. The airlines, the airwaves are full of private entities that sell seats much cheaper than SAA. So if you're continuously having to bail out a state-owned entity, the question becomes, why? What are you going to do? Now, SABC didn't used to get bailout. It used to be funded by advertisers' money and TV licenses and so forth. So it's bankrupt now because the funders and the advertisers are staying away. Why? Because they've made some very, very poor leadership decisions. If the new board can turn that around and attract the investors back or the advertisers back, and they get their viewerships up and change their policies, well, it might survive. But until then, it's going to require a bailout, and some hard decisions need to be made. If I was in government, I'd say we don't really need it. Let's keep the radio stations going and a number of things, but SABC, maybe one station, maybe some news, but it cannot have the political meddling that it's had.
All right, you've given us a lot of hope, and I have no doubt that our viewers are going to go and sign up and become members of OUTA. But what else do we need to ponder? What else is happening? What else is looming on the horizon that we need to keep our eyes open for those eventualities?
Well, I think the biggest advice I would give is we've got to be very careful that as a nation we don't slip into depression. We don't feel hopeless. We've got to believe that we can turn this around. We've got to believe we've invested and that we've got to get our country back out of the hands of the corrupt.
Do you ever feel despondent? Because I do.
I get frustrated. At times I might get despondent, but I've got to keep reminding myself that we're in this for the long run, and we're in this to make this country a better place, and it's not going to happen overnight. And we've got no shortage of cases coming at us, requests. We cannot deal with everything unless the bigger we get. So No, I think what we need to do as a nation is fight. We need to participate in the rallies, in the programs that come up. We need to get behind civil society. We need to make the noise, and we need to participate wherever we are called on to participate. And I don't know what the future holds, but I do know the future is going to hold some very creative energy. We're going to be starting to ask employers of companies to look up to their leaders of those organizations and say, what are you doing as big business to put government under pressure? Because my tax money is being abused here. You know, we get calls for this tax revolt all the time, but a tax revolt is not just an easy thing to put together. But when big business gets together and says, we pay the PAYE and the VAT over, and you're squandering it, government, so we need to have this discussion. That pressure can come from the people. The spending habits can come from the people. The TV license issue is being boycotted by millions of people, thousands of people, and they shouldn't be, but it's one that they can apply that pressure. And I'm not advocating that people go out there and break that law, but I'm saying they are breaking it.
Right.
Like they did on the e-tolls matter. It's lawful, you've got to pay. Well, we're not. We're being civilly disobedient. What are you going to do about it? Explain why you're squandering our money. And there's all of these areas that they've got to look at being creative about to send the message to government. We will not tolerate this nonsense.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you for holding up the flag for South Africa. I can see your heart is in the right place, as it should be. And we're very pleased for people like Wayne Duvenage talking up for the man in the street, and that is you and I. Still to come on the show, we're going to talk about the Pink campaign and drug addiction and the rehab centre in Durban. But first, let's take an ad break. Welcome back. We're now going to be talking to Dani van den Berg. He's from Momentum, and he's going to be talking to us about one of their corporate social investment initiatives, and that is the Pink Day and cricket. Very interesting. Let's hear how this has all come together. Dani, morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Julia. A pleasure to be with you.
Lovely to have you here. Now, the Pink Day, we know, is in support of breast cancer. It's a huge thing for women all around South Africa. And cricket. How did the two of that, women, breast cancer and cricket come together?
It's actually an amazing, lovely story. 5 years ago, Andra Nel, who's head of marketing at the Gauteng Cricket Board, approached us and wanted to check in whether we would be interested in actually hosting one of the Momentum ODIs as a Pink Day, where we would actually dedicate the whole day to breast cancer, and all the proceeds of whatever we raise would go to Pink Drive for breast cancer. And we just loved it. I mean, we really wanted to be part of it because it is so close to our hearts. And I can elaborate on it, but we pay out, 14 million rand a day in terms of risk-related claims, and more than 20% of that is actually cancer-related. So it's a huge thing for us as a business. But it's almost like more important to get people not to be ill. To have early detection and all those things. And so we actually really wanted to get involved because we wanted to show our hearts.
This is a really fun day at the Wanderers on Pink Day, and it happens once a year. Yes. And I know from footage that we've seen on TV and people who have actually attended the event, there's a sea of pink. Every possible living thing and person that attends is decked out in pink. It's huge. It's gained momentum. Excuse the pun. It's gained momentum, and it's a real big success for you. But how does it impact the woman in the street or the cancer survivor?
Yes, you are so right. It is an amazing fun day, but it's more about the cause. I mean, how do we really intervene so that ideally women or even men also get breast cancer aren't actually going through a stage where it actually becomes critically, so that they can die of it. So early detection is actually the success. So what this day is all about is actually to create that awareness amongst men and women, but more so women, because the percentage of breast cancer is much higher amongst women, and actually get them to go for a clinical examination which we actually do there that day, or either then go for tests themselves afterwards, or go through to one of those trucks that the money being donated to Pink Drive has raised over the years. So it's all about actually getting people to be aware, but also to make sure that they have early detection, so that they go for a clinical examination to prohibit it from actually becoming full-blown breast cancer, which might be life-threatening.
When does the Pink Day happen at the Wanderers Stadium?
Julia, it's always at the Bidvest Wanderers, and it's always a Momentum ODI, and it will always be around about December or January, depending on the incoming tour, and so we pick one of those games at Wanderers as the Pink Day.
I'm wondering about the partnership between sport, cricket in this instance, sport, and an awareness on taking care of your mind, body, and soul, very especially in this instance, breast cancer. Yes. How did the two come together? How do they work? And here's men and children involved as well.
Yeah. Do you know what we see from our own claim statistics? In terms of if you live a healthy lifestyle and if you are fit, I mean, all those stats are available where you actually see it, where the likelihood of people being, being diabetic or cardio or even cancer, if you live a healthy lifestyle where you're fit, is much lower than if you were not to do any exercise. So yes, sport, and actually this goes hand in hand, where this is so lovely in terms of making people who love sport realize that, maybe they should not just sit and watch it, they should actually go and exercise and do some exercise and become active, because that is actually, the core of the message, is become active, because that is preventative over the long term. And that's what we want people to know, and that's why the link with a lovely sport, especially cricket, was so important.
Yeah, and the beauty about cricket is that I see more and more girl children and women are beginning to take up the sport. They're playing the sport.
Absolutely. Julia, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but we also sponsor women's cricket in South Africa. So it's actually the Momentum Women's Protea team playing. And for that reason, because the whole thing about gender equality and maybe if you think about cricket is actually becomes a family thing. If one of the children, either a boy or a girl, plays cricket, you spend hours and hours next to the field and weekends supporting your children. So that's why the other thing, it becomes a family thing. And mothers are so core to families. And if any mother were to incur this dreadful disease of breast cancer, it is so sad. So this is all, the sport, cricket, family, blends in.
And I agree, family gets involved. Even if just one member of the family is playing the sport, it brings and keeps families together. Now, back to your CSI initiative with cricket and the Pink Day. I should imagine this is going to be a long-term relationship.
No, absolutely. And we just love it. And what it's done for our own people who get involved. And just seeing the unity it brings in this country. Everybody, coming together for this amazing cause. It's actually the role we want to play in this country. We need to bring people together. And sport, and especially, this dread disease which we cover, is such an amazing thing to do that.
How do you monitor the success? Apart from a sellout stadium, how else do you monitor the success of the day and that the message, the breast cancer awareness message, is getting across? It's a fun day, it's a fun way of doing it to create awareness of a terribly dreaded disease. But how do you monitor the success?
So yes, Julia, that's a good question, because in terms of all these, the funds raised via this initiative, surely that should be applied for good use.
Yes.
So one of the ways we measure it is how many, for instance, technical examinations have women undergone. And since 2013, over 100,000 women has actually gone for that. And then those trucks that we support, they cost 10 million rand a truck.
Tell us more about the trucks. Are you talking about the mammo trucks?
The mammo trucks.
Okay.
They cost 10 million. And for those trucks, just to be, and there's 3 of them, to be mobile. And
3 of them nationally or just in Gauteng?
No, 3 of them nationally. And those trucks actually, it costs almost R1 million a month to keep them running. So you can imagine. And they've done since 2013 over almost 12,000 mammograms in those trucks, which normally would be a hospital procedure, which they can do in those
And
trucks.
normally women, rural women and women who don't have the time or can't wait in long hospital queues would not go for the actual mammo and possibly die from breast cancer.
Absolutely, and that's what we see. So that's why, Pink Drive does such an incredible job. They actually go to rural areas where these women can't access and don't have the transport or the access to any hospitals nearby.
All right, let's hold that thought. We're going to talk some more about the Pink Drive after we take an ad break. I'm talking to Dani van den Berg. He's talking about the Momentum Pink Drive and the Pink Day at the Wanderers Stadium, which happens once a year, which is around about December, January, and the impact that it has made in the lives of ordinary South African people. Do stay with us. Let's take an ad break first. And a reminder that we're talking to Dani van den Berg. We're talking about the Pink Day at the Wanderers Cricket Stadium. Still to come on the show, our final interview will be with Dr. Anwar Jiva. He runs the Minds Alive Rehab Centre in Durban, and he's going to talk to us about rehabilitation, and he's also going to be talking about a particular modality, and that is the ibogaine treatment modality. Do stay with us. We do hope that you're enjoying being in our company this morning. But right now, it's back to Dani van den Berg and the Pink campaign. Dani, as a matter of interest, how much money did you raise from the last campaign? The last Pink Day.
The last one in February was actually 600,000 rand.
Oh, wow.
And I want to again thank the
And this is just the people that attended the game on the day at Wanderers and they donated?
All people could actually donate that via television with an SMS, which they still can do, in fact.
Okay.
So they can just SMS cricket to 40158. And that would actually donate 20 Rand to Pink Drive.
40158.
40158. And just put the cricket there, and that actually would donate 20 Rand. But that day we've raised 600,000 in total from people actually donating money via that, or people being at the ground, or what we have given as well. But over the last, since the inception, 2013, we've raised up almost 3 million Rand.
Just through this Pink Day, the Pink Cricket Day?
Yes.
Okay, now I know that you've spoken about the 3 mammogram trucks, and you've told me that it costs, what, about R1 million?
It's 10 million Rand for the 3. And 1 million Rand a month
to run.
Yes.
And that is that's all part of your CSI program.
It's not only us. Remember, that's a Pink Drive initiative.
Okay.
So Pink Drive, we partnered with us
right.
on this Pink Day. So they have a lot of other initiatives as well. Pink Drive is doing an incredible job.
Okay.
They link with many other sporting events as well, or any other event. But we must probably be the biggest in terms of raising funds.
Just as a matter of interest, we'll be talking to them in a week or 2.
Fantastic.
So I will mention that we've had you on air as well. What else happens on the day to create awareness for breast cancer at the grounds, at Wanderers? Apart from the mammogram truck being there, what else do you do to create the fun, the hype, the activity?
One thing that stands out, and people might have realized it, but the team, AB de Villiers, and team actually wears pink that day. Remember, that's never been done before. Yeah, but they actually, themselves, and they actually, tweet, and they have many followers, and they actually rally a lot of people to raise funds as well, which is amazing. In fact, every time the man of the match has actually donated the money also to Pink Drive.
Wow!
So it's just the hearts of people, opening towards this amazing cause. And we just see a lot of businesses coming in and participating, and we also host there with Pink Drive, so we give them a suite where they can actually host survivors at the day as well, where they tell these stories and amazing stories.
Right.
Because it's all about a story, and it's all about families, and it's actually amazing how emotional the day
I'm sure.
it actually is. I mean, in my own family, I mean, my mother-in-law is a survivor. I mean, I've got people in my team who are survivors. It's actually close to home
Very
for
close
everyone.
to home.
So
Very close.
everyone knows somebody very well.
Let's go back to the trucks. Now, they go out into the rural areas and into townships and so forth to screen women for breast cancer. What happens when it is found that a certain percentage of the women do present with lumps and they need further examinations like biopsies and possibly treatment? Do you do any follow-up? Does your company do any follow-up?
No, that's actually because it's a Pink Drive's initiative there on the ground. They would actually make sure that those people get the relevant treatment as soon as possible. So we don't have any interventions at that point in time.
All right, so you just focused on the actual Pink Day.
On the Pink Day, and providing the funding and support for that.
Do you think this could grow, and how else do you think it could grow? Which direction would you like to see it going?
I actually, the whole idea is actually people can go for training to do this basic clinical examination. And I would actually encourage, women and men out there to actually understand and go for training possibly, and go to Pink Drive and ask them to train them to do these clinical examinations. So if somebody wants to do good in the community, they can actually volunteer to go and do that. And
so they could join the trucks to go out to do the examinations,
yeah,
or
Julia,
what?
There's education trucks as well.
Okay.
And that's the beauty. So it's not only about those 3 trucks. So there's many other smaller trucks that goes out where they actually train people to do the clinical examination. And
is that also part of your CSI
That's also
initiative?
part of money that we donate, to that. But there's many other companies also donating to that, so we're not the only ones. And that's why we're willing to partner with anybody on it. And that's why we have a lot of partners on this day, which is fabulous, because this is one area where it's not about us as a momentum brand only. We partner with anybody who wants to partner and do good. But it goes beyond it. Pink Drive does partner with anybody else as well.
I know that you're very passionate, your company is very passionate about education as well, because when you educate a child, you're really educating a village or a nation.
Absolutely.
Because there's going to be a great future for that child. How do you believe this could tie in with the Pink Day and the Pink campaign?
It is. There's a high correlation between education levels and then almost the ability to actually go for a screening earlier on. So
understanding the importance of it.
Yes, so education, we just see it with our research, in terms of financial wellness of people in this country. Education is key to most probably all our problems in terms of solving it, even financially well people. There's a correlation. It shows education, and then your health as well. So if you are well educated, it actually tends to be, you're more clued up, when to go for what kind of tests. And if you know about this is the whole idea about the education trucks, is to educate women in communities so that they can actually fulfill that role, even beyond the fact that the track is not there anymore. And I want to encourage people to really contact Pink Drive, to volunteer for that, because it's such an amazing thing.
What else can we get out of the Pink Day, the awareness, apart from it being a fun day out with the family and half the nation, so to speak? What else can we take home as far as the Pink Drive is concerned in partnership with you, Momentum?
Well, the fact that we actually see in terms of our own research that 20% of our death claims are actually cancer related, and our critical illness claims, 34% of it is actually cancer related. But these things, nobody just wants to have money but be seriously ill. And so people should actually seriously consider, having regular checkups, screen themselves medically more often, so that they can rather prevent this ugly disease, hitting them, and actually be more proactive about their health. So if that's one thing that we can achieve with this, people should go for medical checkups more regularly and have an active lifestyle.
The Pink Campaign and cricket is about breast cancer awareness, but I think it goes beyond that.
Yes.
Because if you're putting the focus on breast cancer, really the message goes out for any and every cancer, and it makes people sit up and realize that I need to take my condition, my health and my well-being, I need to take responsibility for it. I need to do something about it, and that's where you come in with the Awareness Day.
Absolutely.
So it does make people sit up and realize that they need to take responsibility. But apart from the Pink Campaign and cricket, I think you guys are also very vested in people with disabilities. Can you quickly tell us about that?
Yes, I think about a third of our CSI budget we actually allocate to people with disabilities, because in many instances, you know, a lot of the people who have disabilities can be educated as well and actually be given certain skills. So
and
what
become
we do,
a part of society.
Yes, so what we do is we combine the disability and education.
So
that we
you
can
upskill them.
Yes,
You
so
give
that
them
we
an
can
opportunity.
we can equip people to actually becoming part of the society.
Donnie, for people watching us this morning and heard that message from you, and let's assume the person is disabled and is not employed, can they get in touch with your company and ask for assistance?
Remember, in terms of the CSI, you can never do it on an individual basis.
Sure.
So you always do it via a non-profit organization.
But you would point them in the right
But we will
direction.
point them in the right direction to actually join or become part of where that non-profit organization plays a role in a society, in particular with people with disability.
Oh, that's wonderful. So there is hope. And what's your take-home message to all our viewers this morning, apart from Pink Campaign and cricket, disabilities and everything else that you do?
Well, you know what? Take your health seriously and start having an active lifestyle, because that actually is the key to actually prohibit or prevention of all this misery that all these dread diseases can cause.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show this morning. Thank you indeed. And please, please keep up the amazing work with Pink Day and the Pink Awareness Campaign and cricket. I think it's a fun day. It's a lovely day for the entire family. And it certainly does touch millions of lives, because not only the people at Wanderers Stadium, which is about 30,000 people that fill out the stadium, it's not only those 30,000 people, it's the circle, you know, that just grows bigger, and everybody that watches it on TV all around the world. So you guys are making a huge, huge, huge impact. Keep up the great work. Thank you for being with us on the show this morning.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure. Thank you, Julia.
My pleasure entirely. That was Donnie van den Berg talking to us about the Pink Campaign and cricket, just how it's making a difference in people's lives and making inroads into rural communities and where people are not able to go out and take responsibility for their illness and their particular social circumstances. Amazing work being done by Momentum, and we doff our hats off to them. Long live the Pink Campaign and Cricket Day. Still to come, we are going to talk to Dr. Anwar Jiva about drug dependence, drug addiction and rehabilitation centres. Do they work? Well, let's hear from him. And in the final segment on the show this morning, a rather serious matter, and we're once again talking about addictions, and this time around with someone who's been working long and hard in this area, and he is Dr. Anwar Jiva from the Minds Alive Rehab Centre in Durban to talk to us about the highs and lows, excuse the pun, the highs and lows of drug addiction. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity, Julie.
Wonderful having you in the studio. You have years and years of experience. You have set up a drug rehab centre in Durban. Now, a lot of people are of the opinion that these centres don't work. You go in, you get yourself cleaned up, go back out onto the streets and you relapse. some people have been in and out of rehab centres, and they just don't seem to make any headway as far as their healing is concerned. Why is that?
Well, there's a very logical reasoning behind this. First and most importantly is that majority of the treatment centers, the people that go to treatment are not going for the right reasons. If you want to go there to change, then it'll help. Rehabs do not perform miracles. It's just an area where you're in a drug-free, emotional-free, stress-free environment where you can heal. Also, the program that they use in drug rehabilitation centers are outdated. How is it possible for somebody who is really messed up, emotionally affected to such a level that is right down in the gutters, and then when they walk into a treatment centers and you tell them that you have an addiction which is a chronic relapsing disorder and it is incurable. Now that alone tells you there's no hope. And then they tell you once an addict, always an addict, you're going to be an addict for the rest of your life, and there's no way you're going to come right. Then they're telling you, let's come right. So it's very crucial and important that the intention and the reason behind why the person wants to change, because nobody can force change. I mean, there are different models. There's a model called therapeutic community model where they actually enforce very strict discipline and hard rules for a year, and the guy still comes back and messes up because he didn't want to change. Somebody tried to force him to change. So it's the whole concept of addiction is wrong today, and that is why it's not working.
Now, you yourself have had the experience. I think you were, firstly, of course, you're a medical professional. You're a dentist by profession, but your life's journey has taken you all around. You were an addict yourself for about 17 years, and somewhere along the line you decided that you needed to take control of your life, and thus the birth of the Minds Alive Rehab Centre in Durban. You've been clean for 18 years. How difficult has that been for you?
Well, you see, when I look back now, I realize that it was the plan of God, Allah's plan. Because at that time, in the Muslim community, we didn't have a huge problem. So I think Allah knew that in the future it's going to become a huge problem. So He used me, to go through the whole process. And when I'm talking about the process, start to finish until you reach rock bottom, which span over 17 years. And through some divine intervention in the month of Ramadan, in a state rehab, and state rehab is supposed to be regarded as the worst. Prior to that, in a mental institution, that a miracle has been done on me where I've recovered. And that's why I dedicated my life to this. So when I was in rehab, I actually saw firsthand the devastating effect that it had on individuals trying to rehabilitate somebody, which I was totally against. And that's prompted me to start my own place. It took a few years before I got to that level. And when I started my own place, then I started taking the whole cause and the whole program in a different angle, that knowing that if you have faith and if you turn to God, then obviously you can be cured.
And the reason you landed up in a mental institution was purely because you were a drug addict?
Correct.
No other reason?
Yes. Actually, I don't like using the word drug addict, so that's another thing that people need to change this concept of labeling. Once you tell somebody the drug addict, you're making him feel low and useless and hopeless. We normally say that I was chemically dependent. You see, so now that has a better feel to it, that I was chemically dependent or I was ex-user or whatever it is.
Aren't we kidding the addict and ourselves as well by using fancy words?
Not necessary. It's called neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming means by using particular words to evoke a different response. If I tell you, Julie, you're bad, you're hopeless, you're bad, you feel terrible.
Of course.
But if I tell you you're good, and if I tell you, although you're bad, and I tell you you're good in a different way, you feel much better.
Absolutely.
So it's about using the word, because if you're going to try and give an indication to an individual that is useless, then he's never going to come right. He's going to feel that is how he's been judged. So the same thing, when you speak about this whole rehabilitation process, about lifting people. I mean, drugs are mind-altering, mood-changing. And once a person becomes affected by drugs, he becomes psychologically and emotionally weak. And also his faculty of reasoning and logic and emotions are diminished. So a person can't understand you. When people say about willpower, his willpower is diminished due to drugs. So you're talking to somebody that basically cannot function. He's just functioning like a zombie. So, you have to first clean them up, and then after you clean them up, then you have to give them hope. And yes, go ahead.
Okay. would you say in your experience and in your rehab center that there are certain drugs that are less damaging and easier to kick, and there are those that are much, much worse, that are so damaging that possibly hope might even be impossible?
That's true, but majority of the drugs are equally damaging. The ones that we consider not to be so serious, like your stimulants, your cocaine, your cat and crystal meth, they are much more difficult to treat because they're psychological. Heroin at one stage was regarded as very difficult to treat, like a 1% success rate. Now it's so much easier because of the new types of treatments we have and the types of medication that we have to help those cases. Now when something is psychological, it becomes more difficult to overcome because the psychological attraction or the psychological addiction comes in a split second. A person might not want to use it, and eventually months later or weeks later, he'll just have this thought and he goes and succumbs to it immediately. Nothing stops him.
Okay, let's take an ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. A rather dark and serious conversation on drug addiction with Dr. Anwar Jiva from the Minds Alive Rehab Centre in Durban. Do stay with us. We will continue the discussion right after the ad break. Welcome back. We're talking drug addiction, and there is hope at the end of the tunnel. So says Dr. Anwar Jiva from the Minds Alive Drug Rehab Centre in Durban. Now, Anwar, you and I have been talking for many, many years, and back in the day, about 10 years or more ago, there almost seemed as if there was no hope as far as rehabilitation is concerned. I understand there are drugs on the market now that can help you overcome, one of them being ibogaine, and I think you're one of the first people in the country, in South Africa, that has introduced ibogaine to the country. Tell us about ibogaine.
You see, when I set up my treatment center, as I said, I was not happy with the current traditional models. First of all, in order to convince people that it doesn't work, I went back to university and I've got my master's degree, and my research was dealing with treatment of substance abuse in the residential centers, looking at the different models and looking at the strengths and weaknesses. I wasn't there to attack anybody or any models. I was saying, how can I improve their models? How can I add things that can complement the models? And there was something in the back of the mind that was worrying me, was a missing link. Before any rehabilitation process starts, you have to get the individual back to pre-addiction stage. Pre-addiction stage.
Okay.
Now, it involves that when we came across ibogaine, we found that it had served that purpose. Why? In a person, in order to be rehabilitated, first you have to detox him. Now, detox is not only physical, because you might have physical, but then you still got the psychological problem. And then also, what about cellular level? So the ibogaine had worked fantastic, detoxing an individual from cellular level, physical level, and psychological level. Then you get a lot of them, although they might have a very good upbringing or come from good homes, or maybe had trauma in their life, you have to first remove the baggage. You can't ask somebody to become clean when he's carrying a lot of baggage. So ibogaine has a tendency to unlock whatever is in the subconscious in a form of baggage and releases them and allow them to bring closure. Now that's where the controversial part of ibogaine comes, because it removes that in a form of images and visions. People think it's a psychedelic drug. Mm-hmm. But when they did studies and they put electrodes in the brain, they found that no, it mimics REM sleep. So it's exactly like when you're sleeping, but the only difference is you're awake. It's a dream, but you're awake, and you're alert, and you're in your senses, and you know where you are. And people remove and bring closure to all the issues that they have. That's the second thing. The third important thing is that drugs has a tendency to change the brain. And I spoke earlier on about the faculty of reasoning, logic, and emotions. You know, a lot of parents will tell you, but we're talking to the individual and nothing seems to be going in. We're talking to a brick wall. That because the frontal lobe, which is the seat of logic, reason, and emotion, they diminish. And it takes 3 months for that to normally come right. Ibogaine has a tendency to revive and activate that in 48 hours. Then,
let me ask you this question. So let's assume someone's been drugging for 10, 20 or even more years,
yes,
and they decide to go on the ibogaine therapy. What are the chances of them relapsing? So, you know, let's assume after and you're going to talk through the therapy with us. After you've been on this therapy, are you kind of good to go?
Well, to be
immediately?
No. You see, we do the ibogaine process over 48 hours. And then the next 3 days, because we are bringing you from your addictive state to a pre-addiction state overnight in a matter of basically 48 hours, where yes, you are back to normal, but you're so used to living in society as a person dependent.
And the ritual of the whole ritual tied in with
Yes.
your drug habit.
Yes, so that's when we deal with the psychological side. We do a lot of psychological programs, life skills programs, and also motivational programs to make you believe yourself. But then we encourage after that. Because I told you rehabilitation centers are not working because everybody is dumped in rehab centers. There's some people don't need rehab centers. Some people can go as outpatient treatment. Some people might need a short-term residential center. Some people might need a longer residential center. Like here in Johannesburg, we use Harun Osman here for our aftercare. We have an aftercare at home in Durban, where people come on a regular basis and we help them and guide them through the process. So Ibogaine job is not a cure. Ibogaine job is as an addiction interrupter. It's to bring you back to pre-addiction stage, bring you back to a normal, when you have been in a newborn stage. And once you reach that stage, we are giving you a new way of life to start from fresh again, from your previous mistakes, to learn from your previous mistakes.
What about withdrawal symptoms?
That's the beauty. That's
do
the
you
beauty of
suffer from
Ibogaine.
withdrawal symptoms
That's
on
the beauty of
Ibogaine?
Ibogaine. Heroin is the worst withdrawal symptom. If you see people suffering cold turkey, you'll cry. And majority, in fact, all opiate users, opiates are pethidine, morphine, codeine, and heroin. All of them only use the drug not to enjoy it. It's because to feel normal. The withdrawals are so severe. Ibogaine removes the withdrawals instantly like magic.
So how long does it take after the Ibogaine treatment? You've talked about 3 days post the treatment, where you do a bit of counselling and psychological support. What else needs to be put in place to hopefully rehabilitate that person totally so they never ever get a craving in their life thereafter?
Correct. You see, as I say, that our job is we work on the active experience of Ibogaine over 48 hours. Then for the next 3 days, we allow the psychological side to work. Then thereafter, what we do is we refer people. We say, okay, you might need aftercare, you can survive. You might need a residential center where you need a longer treatment. Now, when you look at opiates, which become a big problem, like your sugars, your wonga, your nyape, all those things are a major problem in this country. So we found that there is a tablet called naltrexone. The sad part is that they've legalized and they prescribe methadone and Suboxone to remove withdrawals. But that's a synthetic opiate, 10 times more severe than the original drug they're trying to treat. Now, after we clean them up, we encourage to use naltrexone. You get it in the form of tablets or implants. And once you give a person a naltrexone tablet, it's impossible for him to use an opiate again because it's an antagonist. And the beauty of those tablets, they are not addictive. They can be used for many years and dropped. So because the biggest problem, and that's one of the cause of relapses in rehabs, is when a person gets back into the environment. Availability and accessibility is one of the main causes of relapses. So if you got a tablet, that even if it's available and accessible, but you can't touch it.
Okay, so after Ibogaine, what are the chances or the percentage of relapsing after Ibogaine?
You see, I basically don't want to give people an idea of feeling that Ibogaine is a cure. But to be honest with you, we've seen a lot of miracles. People taking the Ibogaine experience, not just the 48 hours, but the psychological and the aftercare. We've seen miracles. Because here's a substance that's going into your body and cleaning your body, your mind, and your soul to such a level like you never touched drugs. We've seen people that never had a feel for drugs, because it also helps with cravings at the same time.
So if you have a sugar craving, or if you're addicted to sugars or cigarettes for that matter, can you be cured via Ibogaine?
You see, that's the difference. You must want to change. If you want to change, Ibogaine takes you based on your intention. I had 5% of the guys that didn't want to change, and they left. They defaulted and left immediately for the drug. You must want to change. The beauty part of Ibogaine is that if you want to change, it just makes it easy for you to change. And it's not only just for drug addiction. It deals a lot with psychological issues. Depression, it's the best antidepressant in the world. People with post-traumatic stress disorder, it's got phenomenal healing powers that I know of a number of people who've never had any follow-up treatment. and are still up till now
However,
clean for
it's
many
not
years.
available in South Africa, is it?
No,
Through
fortunately,
registered outlets
no,
only?
fortunately, I've got it registered as a Schedule 6 medication.
Mm-hmm.
It's available only to be used under medical supervision
Obviously.
in a clinical setting, because they are fly-by-nights.
Right.
That are ripping people off with their money, doing it in their homes. It's not so easy. There's other things you have to complement. You have to have a medical team in place, because there can be some risk in between. And there are some exclusion criteria that we follow. So yes, currently we do have it available. in
Very
this country.
quickly, we're running out of time. Just mention 1 or 2 exclusion criteria.
Well, the most important thing is that we stay away from is people with heart problems and liver problems.
Okay.
And also people with psychiatric medications.
All right.
Those are the main reasons. And we've come out with ibogaine tinctures now, which can be used at home. It's a milder form of ibogaine
Right.
for people for home use, because it's much safer. And it does help tremendously.
Costs, what sort of costs are we looking at?
We're actually the cheapest in the world, because we work as a non-profit organization.
Right.
So we charge like 8,000 Rand if you want to share a room with somebody, 12,000 Rand if you want your own single room. And that includes everything, your food, your accommodation, and all your food
For
therapy.
how long?
It's 5 days. But in that 5 days, we don't just do ibogaine. We do crystal healing, quantum healing, Reiki, massage therapy, Tai Chi, yoga, individual
The full
psychotherapy.
package,
Full package.
mashallah.
Yeah.
So
And we
you're really
don't-
pampered while you're there.
Oh yes, because we're not a rehab center, we're a wellness clinic. You have a swimming pool, jacuzzi, take you to walk on the beach, take you for mountain hikings and all those things.
Sure. So rehab does come at a cost. Basically, what we're saying is that if you decide to take that first step towards addiction, you're going to be truly, it's going to be a huge cost to your mind, body, soul, spirituality, and financially as well. So
That's
it's something
correct.
that you need to think about deeply before you take that
But
first
we work
leap
on a sliding
towards.
scale too. We help the people who are poor.
Right.
We subsidize people. So it's not like if you can't afford it, you are not allowed. No, you see.
And very definitely, as you said, it's a Schedule 6 drug. People watching us this morning can't decide, I'm going to go to the chemist, buy the medication and self-medicate.
No.
It won't work.
It won't work, and it's dangerous. People have died.
All right. Your closing thoughts for this morning.
Well, what is very important is that I make a humble appeal to families that, don't force anybody to go into treatment center, because you might have peace for a while, and understand that those that want to change can change, but it must come from within. And I always believe, in the famous Quranic ayat, that Allah Ta'ala will change the condition of the people if you change yourself. So that's what you should focus. Focus on yourself, and everything around you will come right.
Inshallah, Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your efforts.
Ameen.
Lots of success for the Minds Alive Clinic, and let's hope and pray that it comes to a stage where we don't need clinics such as those around the country, because we do know that we're living in a very sick society at the moment, and we need to do everything possible to try and heal ourselves as a community and society as a
And
whole.
because we want to reach out to as many people as possible, we're opening a branch in Rustenburg in 2 weeks' time.
Inshallah.
So that will be even accessible to the people in the Gauteng area.
Absolutely. Shukran for being with us. That then brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's wrap up with our thought of the day, which is: the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. A big thank you to the production team, and till the next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi and Khudafiz from me, Julie Alli.
قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حني قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا